train on the 4th of July in Pullman.
Well, what makes Pullman special is the role it's played in our history. This place has been a milestone in our journey toward a more perfect union.
On the rim of the fountain at Pioneer Court, the names of some dozen builders of Chicago are carved. Among them, that of George M. Pullman, my grandfather. He came to Chicago in 1855, a young man of 24. And made his first mark on the city, helping to pull it out of the mud by jacking up many of the important downtown buildings to the level of the sidewalks. Several years later, he went by train and stagecoach to Central City, Colorado, where for 2 years he owned and operated gold mines, a sawmill, and a general store. Before returning to Chicago to design and develop his sleeping cars, which so transformed travel that the name of Pullman came to mean all that was comfortable and luxurious in railroad transportation. I like to think that my grandfather's most lasting contribution was the creation of the town of Pullman, Illinois, on the shore of Lake Calumet at 111th Street, Chicago. There, between 1880 and 1884, a whole town grew, the first planned industrial town to be built in this country. It was designed by 2 young men from the East, Solon S. Beeman, architect, and Nathan Barrett, landscape architect, who were inspired by Mr. Pullman's vision and went to work immediately and enthusiastically. A sewer system, water mains, gas lines, streets, and parks were laid out, and an artificial lake constructed. Car shops, administration building, Florence Hotel, Market Hall, Greenstone Church, school, and the arcade building, a veritable shopping center, complete with theater, library, meeting rooms, shops, post office, and bank, sprang up with amazing speed. Simultaneously, modern, convenient, and attractive houses were taking shape to be rented to workers of all grades. For one of Mr. Pullman's ideas was that good living conditions would encourage good and contented employees. He provided his workmen, as well as his executives, with amenities far from common in 1880. Where else would they have had houses with running water, indoor plumbing, illuminating gas, adequate light, and good ventilation? In August 1881, my grandfather wrote my grandmother, "The place has improved wonderfully since you saw it in June."
Mrs. G. M. Pullman, Long Branch, New Jersey, Pullman Cottage, Chicago, 17 August, 81. My darling wife, I received your nice long letter this morning and enjoyed its perusal very much. Mother came in and went with me to Pullman at 10 o'clock, and we returned at 2. The place has improved wonderfully since June, and I am sure you would be quite delighted to see it. Florence Avenue and all the little parks are now quite complete. There are great quantities of flowers, which, with the trees, shrubbery, and fresh green lawns, makes a beautiful picture. If the hotel was ready for occupancy, I think I would prefer to stay there instead of Chicago. My precious darling, I hope you will be quite and thoroughly rested by the time you receive this. I miss you very much. I am working awfully hard and hope to get away Saturday night. We'll write you again in a day or two. Love and kisses for the children, and a world of love for my darling. Yours always, George.
I have a feeling that nothing Mr. Pullman did gave him greater satisfaction and pleasure than the town of Pullman from its inception until the sad days of the Pullman Strike. He died of a heart attack in 1897. And in 1898, the Illinois Supreme Court ruled that the Pullman Land Association must divest itself of all property not needed for industry. As Pullman ceased to be a company town, its population gradually changed, though some families stayed on and have third and fourth generation descendants here today. The town was so well planned and solidly built that now many of its dwellings are sound, habitable, and architecturally well worth saving. In 1969, through the efforts of the Pullman Civic Organization and its Beeman Committee, Pullman was designated an Illinois Historic District, and in subsequent years a national and a Chicago landmark. Pullman today is indeed a living community. Its residents and the 2-year-old historic Pullman Foundation are dedicated to its restoration and preservation as an example of the enlightened vision of George M. Pullman. This bicentennial project film is part of a continuing effort to document the quality of 19th century life in the town of Pullman.
May 1891, we landed in Pullman. I know it was lovely because there was trees on each side of the street, and everybody had grass and lawns. Pullman was beautiful. And you know, when you got off at the Pullman Depot, and there was the Lake Vista. It was lawn, you know, down to the water, and on the east side of that, where you could see it from the train, they had Pullman spelled out in the white gravel, I remember that.
Can you tell us what it was like for the average housewife in those early years in Pullman?
We all had a hot dinner at noon, and the men that lived in Pullman all came home for dinner at noon. And then at night, in the summertime, everybody sat on their porches. I always think of it now. You know what, I was raised on this block. And all the parents would be out, sitting out on their front porches. And us kids, we'd be sitting on the grass, singing our school songs. You know, that was a very happy, don't you think? You know, my mother had a lot of babies, and I was the oldest girl. And we'd be playing jack, and I'd come home from school, and Ma'd say, well, you go out till the baby wakes up. And you know, when you play jack, you have to sit and wait your turn. You know, everybody gets a turn. And it would be just time for my turn when I hear Mom, Nellie! this baby's awake. Oh, I ain't sick of that long. And I'd miss my turn. Well, I tell you, Pullman was the most modern town in the country. When we were young, everybody all around us had a well and an outhouse. We all had toilets and the water in the house. We never knew what it was to have to go outside. And you know, in Roseland, from the tracks west, everybody had a outdoor toilet and a well. That is really true. I know that to be a fact. Well, we all had a good big kitchen. They all had good big kitchens. And everybody ate in the kitchen. And we didn't have no dining room. We didn't think anything of it. We had a big kitchen and we just ate the kitchen.
Getting back to the town of Pullman itself, do you recall the arcade?
Oh,
what that was like?
Of course, I recall the arcade, for goodness sake. Well, that was all stores. The first floor was all stores. And the bank was at one end, and the post office was on the bank was on the south end. No, on the north end. And the post office was on the other side in the arcade, too. And then there was Johnson's hardware store, and there was Hermes stationery store, and there was the arcade mercantile company. That was a dry goods store, kind of like, well, I suppose couldn't call it a department store, but it had dry goods mostly in it, because they'd have sales. Now, let's get this. They'd have sales, and they'd have bills around for the sales, and muslin was 5 cents a yard. And people bought a muslin and made sheets and pill slips and such things. And calico was 5 cents a yard. And in the spring, the people would buy calico, make their kids' dresses for the summer. They'd done all their sewing. 5 cents a yard on sale.
I guess most of the women made a lot of their own clothes.
Oh, yes, they made a lot of their own clothes and your kids' clothes, too, because I did that myself when I was young.
Do you recall the theater?
Hmm?
Do you recall the theater in the arcade?
Yes, I remember the theater very well. They had a operetta there one time. They called it the Fairy Grotto. And I was a fairy, I want you to know. We all had wands with a star on the end of it. Of course, I was just in the chorus, but I was in the Fairy Grotto, and they had incline on each side, and us little kids, we came in carrying our wands and not marching, wasn't marching, we did a little dance step we did coming down this incline. And her name was Reedus before
Harris?
Harris? Mrs. Harris. She was the fairy queen. Oh, that was really something, and that was held in the Arcade Theater.
Your trip to the Columbian Exposition.
Yeah. Well, we took the streetcar right here in front of the door, and we went down, and the streetcar then went down to 103rd Street. And over the 103rd Street, and through the woods. There was a lot of woods there. Rick's farm was there, and we went through the woods and came out on Stony Island Avenue, and went all the way down Stony Island to 63rd, and that was the World's Fair, because it was right there in Jackson Park. There was a group of us went there, 3 or 4 girls, a couple of girls. And we went down and we wandered all around, and we wandered into this building and saw a model of the town of Pullman, which was considered the model town of the world at that time. And we weren't looking for it, we just happened to run into it. And were we fascinated with it? We stood and we picked out every building, the market hall and the arcade, and all the different streets. And as I told you before, they even had our lampposts and our trees.
What do you remember about the Pullman Strike? Can you tell us something about it?
Well, I can remember I came home at noon from school and everybody was on strike. And my girlfriend, I had 2 or 3 girlfriends that lived in this block too. And they said, well, if our fathers are on strike, we're on strike too. It lasted until into the fall. That was an awful. And I remember one night they'd been shooting over. They'd stopped the trains over here, and one night they took everybody off the train and opened up the engine. Somebody opened the engine, and the train went in the river down there, Riverdale, down the bridges down there. And there was a lot of rioting and that going on at that time. And I remember one night they had been shooting over there, and my father was out, and my mother was home with us kids, and she could hear banging, and she just nearly went crazy. She thought Pa was out there that shooting, and it was the dog at the back door. He scratched himself, but it made a noise, and I thought there was shooting going on over there.
Was your dad one of the strikers?
Hmm?
Was your dad one
Oh,
of the
my
strikers?
dad, yes, of course. The whole town was up.
Was there much status placed upon living in certain blocks?
Yeah, oh my goodness, yes. My goodness, yes. The 100 block of White Avenue and an Arcade Row. And Florence Boulevard, that was really something. And the 100 block of Stevenson, too, used to be quite a place to live.
I'll just tell you that my name is Dick Wabalda, and in Hall they spell it Dirk, D-I-R-K. And we came here in 1887. I was 4 years old. The people said you mustn't go to America because that's a wild country. There's Indians there, and they shoot. Well, anyway, we came. And we got off the train on the 4th of July in Pullman. And everybody was shooting.
Really?
At that time, everybody had guns, and flashed and shot My mother said, there it is. The people told us the truth. And we lived in Block R, that was on 113th Street, which is now the Palace Lodge. And it was run by an old lady with a lot of crap in her mind. If the kids came in with dirty shoes, you got a crack on the head. My father worked in Pullman for $1.50 a day.
What kind of work did he do?
Well, I done labor work. He was no mechanic. Yeah, he done labor work of some kind. The rents were very cheap. The rents were only about $5 or $6 a month, so people got along then just about as well as they get along now. Except they didn't have as much, you know. Jesus gone. But otherwise, and we went right to school. The school was on 113th and Pullman Avenue.
Oh.
And it was built by the Pullman Company. It wasn't Pullman didn't belong to Chicago yet. Pullman was a town. And they had a good school. Mr. Martin was the principal. And he ran a very good school, and those kids got a good education. Before Mr. Pullman built the town, he built a brickyard on 116th and Langley, where Sherman Williams is now. And they dug the clay out of the lake, and with the clay from the lake he made brick, and from that brick he built the town, he built the shops, and he built the Hotel Florence. That was opened in 1883. It was heated by steam from the shop, and most of the people that stayed there at that time were foremans and supervisory from the shop. The rates were very cheap. In 1900, the Pullman Company sold the hotel to Mr. Herman Getz.
Mr. Wibaldi, you talked about first living in Block R. That was this building,
Yeah.
which is the historic Pullman Center. It must have been an apartment house.
Yes, it was an apartment house.
How many apartments were in it? Do you remember?
There was 2 on the 3rd floor, and there was 3 on the 2nd floor, and I think there was 4 on the 1st floor. They took the pay. You never owed rent. They took it out of your check.
Could you move any place you wanted to?
If there was a house empty and you could rent it, if the Pullman Renting Association
If you made enough money.
Yeah, I suppose you made enough money so you could pay more. We lived on the 3rd floor because we didn't have any money. My father made $1.25 a day.
Do you recall Kensington? Going to shop up in Kensington?
Bumptown?
Yeah, oh, sure.
That's where we had to go and get our shoes and stuff.
What was Kensington like visually, and can you tell me
Oh,
stories
big
about
deal if you went over to Kensington. Why? Your mother went, you had to go with her.
But Bumptown was just sort of a fun name for it.
Yeah, well, that was on the other side of 115th Street. Well, that's where they had to rush the can over in there.
Yeah.
Rush the can, what does that mean?
They have a little bucket. You get over, and I guess for about a nickel or a dime, you got that bucket full of beer. With a bucket to get their pail of beer.
You mean the Pullman children were sent over to the saloons over there with their little bucket?
Yeah, there was no saloons in Pullman.
Pardon?
No saloons in Pullman.
So the children would go over and get the bucket of beer and bring it home to Dad.
And got empty, it's been again to rest again.
Same day. What's the can?
Same day.
You didn't, though.
No. Well, my father didn't, well, he liked to drink, but not like that. And he never sent for. But I'd go for somebody else for a nickel or something. I would.
Did you ever go over to some of the plays that were put on at the arcade?
Oh, my.
Oh, my is right.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Can you talk about that?
Well, I don't know what I tell. That they were beautiful. It was just the box seats, you know, and all those beautiful velvet curtains.
But I tell you, when little Eva died, I stood out in the aisle. I cried and cried. And how many?
That was in Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Yeah.
That was the kind of play they would put on. Was in Uncle Tom's Cabin. And
all the shows like they was downtown. They came from downtown.
I told this before to somebody. I was in school. My teacher lived at the hotel, Miss McCurdy. And she sent me up to the hotel with a note. And I can't remember what was in the note. I know I would have read it, but because I was a nosy little rascal. And by that hotel was like fairyland. And it took me so long, she wondered what was keeping me, because I went up and down every hall looking, taking a sight up in the hotel. And everybody ganged around me, when I could, because the hotel was really, I'd say, grand.